Thank you for a brilliant introduction, very flattering. And once again, I am Reverend John M. Polk, and the name of my presentation is Enlil, the Biblical God. So the Anunnaki were instrumental in seeding our planet and telling us that they are the gods. Now they want to be instrumental in disclosure by telling us that they posed as God or gods by giving us language and religion. Now, this divided us, causing us to fight amongst ourselves and to take the attention off of them. Now, why would they do this? Because of the divine Trinity, the power of three that's within all of us, especially creator alien gods. It's an integral part of their ascension. Now, first you have the creation energy, which came from Old Testament Enlil, who created we humans in his image. And then second, you have the power that maintains. Enter Jesus Christ, Enlil's own hand-sculpted deity, to usher in a new sense of love and love for all human beings, regardless of what their religion was, as he was trying to convert many to Christianity and was very successful in doing so as he traveled around the earth. And then finally, you have the destructive energy, which is taking place right now. You know, you look at our global economy, our financial systems, terrorism. You know, unfortunately, that last terrorist attack happened 7.3 miles from my house here in Orlando, Florida. And then the imminent disclosure, which is well on its way. Now, unfortunately, you cannot have rebirth and renewal without three, including the destructive energy. So therefore, the creation energy is just as important as the destructive energy, which will start the cycle over again. Now, disclosure will restart the cycle, and it's just a matter of time before it's upon us. Disclosure will be the definitive proof that ET created religion, thus destroying our old misguided religious beliefs. Only then can we achieve enlightenment, knowing that we are all a part of the one universal God consciousness. Now, as you alluded to earlier in the preface of my presentation, I did do a presentation at Experiencer Speak 4 conference where I conducted a seance through a guided meditation with 79 experiencers, tapping into the energy of experiencers, which increased my energy exponentially to be able to conduct this seance and actually ask loving and benevolent extraterrestrials, extra dimensionals, and angels to join us in the congregation. And it actually worked. There was over 20 witnesses, as you said, and I'm going to go into that in the second half of my presentation. Enlil, the biblical God, the way I interpreted Enlil a couple years ago, before I realized who he really was, I interpreted him as Yahweh, but I still called Yahweh. Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien, is my book that Karen Christine Patrick, it's my publicist editor. She did my whole PowerPoint presentation for me. We did it together, but she was the artist behind the whole thing, and I love her to death. But anyway, the book is available at johnpolkmedia.com and alienoraclescrolls.com. Now, Enlil, the biblical God. The premise of the book is that the God portrayed in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, is not the real God. He's an extraterrestrial, alien creator God that goes by many names dating back in history. To differentiate this being from the real God, I refer to him as Yahweh. The book explores the idea that alien creator God seeded our planet. This creator God alien is also known as Enlil of the Anunnaki. Now, let's switch gears for a few before I move forward. There's a foundation that I work with as a consultant. It's called Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free Foundation, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And they have actually articulated and conducted the most comprehensive and longest study into ET contact with experiencers exclusively. Now, I've done the first 2 phases out of 4 phases in this research project. They have published results on experiencer.org. If you're an experiencer, you want to take the survey, encourage you. It will help all of us and the 20 plus PhDs that free boasts to be able to increase the data and increase the research. And, you know, without people taking the survey, there's no point in having the survey. So there's thousands of people that have taken it, and you're more than invited to take it, especially, of course, if you are an experiencer. And that's at experiencer.org. Now, Ray Hernandez, one of the co-founders of Free, and Dr. Rudy Schild, Emeritus Professor of Astrophysics at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Now, Dr. Schild also serves as the Executive Director of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free. Both of these gentlemen, along with Audrey Starborn-Hewins. Now, Audrey Starborn-Hewins is the young lady that asked me to be the opening speaker at the Experiencers Speak 4 conference August of last year. But all three of them have donated articles to my book. Audrey was about her experiences as an experiencer with the Pleiadians. Ray Hernandez wrote an article entitled "The Paranormal Quantum Hologram Theory of ET Contact." And Dr. Schild's article is entitled "Modern Miracles and the Quantum Hologram." All three of these articles are in the book, Yahweh, the Biblical God, is an Alien. Ray Hernandez, co-founder of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free Foundation, his birthday is on October 1st. So last year, he came up with the concept of Experiencer Liberation Day, which is October 1st. The first one was celebrated last year on October 1st. Now, every October 1st for the rest of our lives, we can celebrate this day. And you can buy a button, like we have the artwork here on this slide. And I think it's $10 if you go to experiencer.org. It's a nonprofit organization, only costs $10, and it helps support these foundations that really don't have a whole lot of money coming in. Aquarian Radio, a special thanks to Dr. Sasha Lesson and Janet Lesson, more specifically Janet, who I work with her every Friday night on the Experiencers Network on Experiencer Night. Every Friday night, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, I co-host with Janet, along with Karen Christine Patrick, who just spoke before me. And we delve into the lives of experiencers and their ET and supernatural encounters. Please go to the website, www.aquarianradio.com. Give us a listen, even call in you wish. And if you wish to be on the Experiencers Network show, possibly we can get you on. You can message us through aquarianradio.com, or you can message me, Reverend John Polk, at Reverend Polk on Twitter, or you can email me directly, jpolk2@cfl.rr.com. Also, I did 6 different podcasts on SoundCloud that Karen Christine Patrick actually put music to, and she's great at production, by the way. But, you know, Yahweh, the Biblical God, is an Alien. In fact, I talk about Enlil and what he did as a creator God alien. It's all in my book, and you can listen to these for free on my website, johnpolkmedia.com. All right, so Enlil, the Biblical God, Ancient Alien Creator Gods. This was a section where I could actually do a whole show on it with all the Creator God aliens, the deities, the higher ascended extraterrestrials, but it would take far too long. But just to give you a map of the world, if you go back into every culture, if you go back into almost every single country, even remote islands in Micronesia, you can find that their heritage, that their own biblical stories within their own religious text goes back to some creator God alien that descended from the sky in a fiery chariot, brought life to the planet, and or manipulated the existing life to create life on our planet. And this is the common story, which plays right into ancient alien astronaut theory that you can go and research on pretty much every area of the entire world. Now, Enlil is Yahweh of the Judeo-Christian traditions. He is a creator God alien. He wanted to be worshiped by we primitive humans. Now, creator God aliens harvest prayer energy from lesser beings like ourselves. Archangels who appear in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions are actually what I call the arch-aliens. Now, these beings, realizing that they needed to fix the human condition in order to be allowed to reach their own next supernatural spiritual level. So let me take a few steps back and explain what I outlined in my book, Yahweh, the Biblical God as an Alien. So when we pray to these creator alien gods, which is what they really want us to do, when we pray to them, they receive and they harness our prayer energy. There is so much power in the spoken word. You can actually measure prayer energy with what you call an electroscope. And often, not always, but often, these creator God aliens would create stone monuments on geodetic markers around the world on the earth grid. And these pyramids, obelisks, pyramid complexes, etc., often mirrored star constellations, i.e. Orion and the Pleiades. So now we're worshiping creator God aliens, stone monuments that are pointed towards the heavens that are basically in line with star constellations. Now, why would they do that? So that that prayer energy goes back to their home planet and goes to them. And so the more we pray to them, the more energy that they receive from us. And that's all part of the basic design in this human creation, not just experiment anymore, but program. So upon us praying to them, they receive this energy. But now let's extrapolate that. Imagine that Earth is not unique in any way in this program, that this program is going on multiple planets, whether we know it or not, in our own solar system, in our own Milky Way galaxy, in Andromeda, our neighboring galaxy, all throughout the universe, and all throughout the multiverse. So imagine Enlil and other creator God aliens may have upwards of thousands of planets that they're receiving prayer energy from. And upon us passing and going to the other side, it's often written in their religious texts how to get to heaven. Well, guess what? You're not necessarily going to heaven. You're going to Enlil and other creator God aliens' version of heaven or hell, depending on how you lived your life. And Janet and Karen and I were talking about this last night. I was talking about this concept, and Janet, I said it a certain way, and Janet kind of tweaked it, and I love what she said. She said, the quantum hologram matrix, where your soul can get caught up in the soul recycling program for perhaps 10, 20, upwards of 100 or more lifetimes before your God self or your soul finally looks away from this false version of heaven or hell and sees the God light and ultimately ascends to the real universal God consciousness, cycles through that, and finally comes back in another incarnation. But this is a basic concept that creator God aliens, not just Enlil, but others throughout, all throughout the universe, which it permeates, that are doing this. Now, what is happening? Where this made Enlil extra supernatural, extra powerful from all of the prayer energy and all of the souls from perhaps billions upon billions of people and beings, not just from our planet, from planets all around the omniverse, where this was making him increasingly more powerful. Now it's thwarting his ascension process. Why? Because the lesser gods rule the planets and the underworld, and the higher gods rule the heavens and tell the lesser gods who rule the planets and the underworld what to do. Enlil wants to be counted amongst and become one of the higher, if not the highest gods in the hierarchy pantheon of outer space. And as long as we are praying to him and he's receiving our souls through deception, it's making him weak, where in the past it made him strong. So now this is the number one reason he came to me years ago. First, he came to me as Enoch back in 2009. So I know that Enoch is definitely part of the Anunnaki pantheon. He came to me as Enoch, and I know I was receiving from Enoch for perhaps a couple years. And then eventually I realized, oh, well, wait, Enoch is in fact Yahweh. Yahweh did not want me to understand that he was actually living vicariously through Enoch to communicate with me. And I asked him, why? Why all the deception? And he said, because you are not spiritually ready enough for the information to be able to digest it, process it, and fathom it. So I had to wait. This is, you're still an infant in this process. It takes a lot of time. And so I understood that. And so after arguing with Karen Christine Patrick about who Yahweh ultimately was, she kept telling me that he was Enlil. And I was just in total denial. I'm like, no, can't be Enlil. And a couple years removed, I realized, Karen, you were right. It is Enlil. So I asked Enlil, why? And he gave me the same answer. You weren't ready yet. And you know what? I wasn't. So I'm glad that they kind of spoon fed me as the infant that I was, as I was growing into this role that I'm supposed to be taking a part of. And I am in Enlil's ascension process to communicate this message to all humanity. But I am not special in any way. I am not unique. All of us, especially us experiencers, are channeling some higher being, perhaps even some creator God alien, to give us information to disseminate to the masses, because it's not time for them to come down to earth and do it themselves. But disclosure is on its way, and it's going to be here before we know it. So I've got a couple close encounters with Enlil that I wanted to share that have changed my life absolutely forever. And they're both, or there's a few of them, all of them are incredible encounters. So let me begin with meeting Enlil on a ship. So I'm on a spaceship, and I'm next to Enlil, and I'm next to Jesus Christ, and I'm next to Ezekiel and Elijah and a number of other biblical figures, Moses, Noah, and some others. And they all present themselves in the very stereotypical Greco-Roman off-white kind of robe with maybe a sash coming over their shoulder. They all had a lot of gray hair, big beards. Now, that's either the way they actually looked, or what I thought they looked like, or the presentation that they wanted me to receive as a human, coming to me looking like human beings. Any one of them could be true, can't be exactly sure, but I think it was what they wanted me to see. They wanted me to see them looking more human, as I am a human. And so then all of those are to my left. And then I look in front of me, and all of a sudden I pan across the front of the spaceship. I see a windshield and stars racing by, just smeared light, like I'm going warp speed in Star Trek. And then in the middle, I see a monster console with all this gadgetry, and I see a gray alien. I don't see his face. It was pretty clear it was a gray alien. And he has a halo on his head, which to me seemed like it was a navigational device that he was using. He wasn't using his hands. He was waving his hands around, but not actually touching any of the gadgetry. You knew he was navigating the space-time vehicle mentally with his mind. And then I pan over to the right, and I see somebody completely different. This individual still wearing the same Greco-Roman off-white robe. However, this one is young in appearance. Looks to be about 18 or 19 years old. Has long, wavy, curly blonde hair. And then in front of him is an oval, not a circle, but an oval, more shaped like an egg. And inside the egg are stars, planets, supernovas, suns, um, outer space, basically. And I can see him without touching any of the stars. He's moving them around with his hands without touching them. And to me, I interpret that as he's manipulating some kind of astronomical or astrological device, which was pretty amazing. And so he'd reconfigure the stars, the planets, the moons, the suns, the black holes, the supernovas, and just with a wave of his hand, whoosh, he'd push that screen away, and then a new set of stars, perhaps a new solar system, perhaps a new galaxy would pop up. And then he would manipulate those stars, those planets, those suns, those moons, those black holes, move all that around. And then with the waving of his hand, whoosh, a new one would pop up. And he did this several times. And so now I'm focused only on this individual to my right, manipulating these star systems, these solar systems, galaxies, if you will. And he can feel me looking at him. I can feel him knowing that he is feeling me look at him. So now all of a sudden we're telepathically communicating with each other without even saying anything. It was more of an empathic thing of feeling each other. So then he looks over his shoulder at me. And who was it? It was me. It was me. So now I have to think, was that really me? Or was it a manifestation of whatever that individual was wanted me to see? Can't be exactly sure, but what a trip. So when I first started having this encounter on I would call Enlil's mothership, I would only have a few biblical figures next to me, but each time I would come back, there'd be more, and there would be more, and there would be more. The last time it was a full house, but the same setup. All the biblical figures to the left of me, the gray alien in front of me, and then whoever it was, whatever it was that looked like me, manipulating this astronomical and astrological device to the right of me. So that was being on Enlil ships. Happened to me a number of times. Another thing that happened to me regarding Enlil is I'm on a ship. And this is a totally different setup. On a ship, and we're sitting down. It's different. What I was sitting on was metallic and it was cold. And then there's two or three human beings, or looked like humans, next to me on my right side. And then at the end was an unusually huge, Asian-looking in appearance, human-like being. He had curiously large, huge eyes, huge eye orbits, Asian in appearance, dark hair, complexion of an Asian. And he says to me that we are going to have to take you for 300 years, just like we did Enoch, to teach you the Akashic record. And I said, I've been praying for this my whole life. I just cannot believe that this opportunity has been bestowed upon me. And then I go, wait, I can't go. I can't do it. And he said, yeah, you can. I'm like, well, please don't take me now, because I just fell in love. I fell in love with the woman of my dreams. I know we've been together many, many lifetimes before. And, if you take me away now, she's going to think that I've been murdered. My body will not be, retrievable. My family, all my friends, not more importantly, but to me, most important thing was this love of my life. She's going to think I'm dead. And you just can't take me now. I mean, I wish you had done it before I met her. But you can't fight the timing in your life. And so I come up with a proposition. So now I'm trying to proposition, more than likely, an extraterrestrial. And I say to him, let me work a deal with you. Allow me to cheat time in another dimension. And he says, cheat time in another dimension? He said, where do you get that from? I said, well, here's my concept. Take me away for 300 years, but allow me to cheat time in another dimension so that everybody in the earth plane thinks I'm only gone for 72 hours, which is 3 days. I'll just tell everybody I had to work the whole weekend, which is believable. That happens to me a lot. And, just don't let me age to be over 300 years old or I'll die. And then I'll come back. I'll be gone for 300 years in this dimension. It may seem like 300 years to me, but to everybody that knows me and loves me here in the 3D earth plane, they'll only think I'm gone 3 days. And so this big Asian being, he says to me, he says, it's a brilliant concept, but you can't do it because you've used up all of your cheating time in another dimension, bargaining chips in your past lifetimes. And this whole concept bled through into this lifetime. And that's why you're bringing it up again. So you can't cheat time anymore. You've been cheating it for however many lifetimes prior to this one. So you're out of chips. You can't do it. And I said, well, how about this? Abduct me every night, whether you physically take my body or you psychically take my soul while I sleep. But just please don't take me from the love of my life. And he agreed to do that. And so about a year later, I was trying to figure out who this huge Asian extraterrestrial was. And it came to me that it was actually Enlil of the Anunnaki. And I asked him, why didn't you, manifest as who you really were? He said the same thing he said before. You weren't ready yet. You weren't mature enough spiritually to be able to absorb it and handle it. So that's why I came to you as somebody that you would never interpret as me. And I had to understand and realize that he was completely and totally correct. So another concept, which is not my concept, it's an old ancient concept, but the Anunnaki conquered the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius, Cygnus, Mars, and countless other planets, star systems, constellations, not just in our galaxy, but all throughout the universe. And so whenever you come in contact with somebody that says they're from Pleiades, that they're Pleiadian, or any of these other star systems, you have to figure that part of their DNA is Anunnaki. The Anunnaki colonized and seeded life on all of these planets. So now it stands to reason, if they come from these planets, that they in fact are Anunnaki. Okay, so I love to sit in my backyard and look at the stars. So if you look at this frame, the far left, that was a UFO. I was able to capture it. Most of the time I can never capture these things, but this one I did. This was back in 2014. Now, the next frame in the bottom middle is actually the top right frame. The top right frame was taken before dark, and the one in the middle was taken after dark. So what that light is, if you go to the top right frame, you see a little light on the roof of somebody's house. So I'm sitting in my backyard in what I call my captain's chair, looking as the sky is starting to get dark. You can just start to see the stars. And I see a bird. I see a bird descend from the sky. No big deal. We all see birds every day. But this bird was different. This bird slowly descended, landed on the roof of my neighbor's house. And the pitch of the roof, if you're sitting on the roof where this light is, it would face me directly in my captain's chair. But right before it landed on the roof, it turned into a rectangular metallic object. So in effect, perhaps a biocyberganic unit. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it went from looking like some kind of organic being into what looked like a machine. So I get up out of my chair, I take my phone over, start taking some pictures of it. And at first there was no light on. So I take a bunch of pictures of it, and it's just this black metallic rectangular object, kind of nondescript. You couldn't really tell what it was or what it wasn't. So then I went back and sat down, and I decided I'm going to send telepathically to this thing to see if anything happens. So I start sending to it telepathically, asking it to communicate back with me. And as it gets dark, and you can see in the frame in the upper right corner that all of a sudden a light illuminated, and I saw this thing go from no light to having a light. Now my curiosity is piqued heavily. And what is this thing? And so I go up and take more pictures of it. And then as it gets dark, take more pictures of it. Um, Now I go back and sit in my captain's chair, and I'm sending to it telepathically some more, and the light goes off and the light comes back on to let me know that it knows that I'm sending it to it telepathically, and that was its way of acknowledging that we're trying to do this exchange of communication. So now my curiosity is just busting through the roof. And then I go out into the street and I see that my neighbors are all taking pictures of it. And I started asking my neighbors, well, what do you think it is? And they're like, well, we don't know. It's just some kind of strange light. And so this went on for a number of hours, and I must have sat there and watched it for 8 hours. And it got kind of boring because it wasn't doing anything, but I could feel it doing diagnostics on me. I could feel it, doing readings on my pulse, my respiration, my heart rate, perhaps even digging into my brain. Not exactly sure, but I could feel it. It was invasive, that feeling that I had, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. I could tell it was doing some kind of analysis on me. So I would pop into my house and pop back outside, go get some water, come back outside, and I did this off and on all night. Finally got bored and went to bed. The next morning at 7 o'clock, it was still there. And then I went back to bed and then came back out. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, it was completely gone. Now, to me, after meditating on this for a couple years now, I believe that whatever that was, it was not sent by the MyLabs. It wasn't sent by our government. I believe it was sent by the Anunnaki, just to keep tabs on me. Can't prove it, but that's the gut feeling that I do have. Now, this particular UFO orb sighting, I called a young lady named Lynn Hartram, who works with Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free. Her name's Lynn Hartram. She runs the peer support program where if you're an abductee or an experiencer and you just want somebody to talk to, you can call her or call free, and she'll get not a counselor, but a peer to talk to you. And all the peers are experiencers just like myself. And I have a few that I talk with also. And so I'm talking to her on the phone, and I said, Lynn, I have found a way to look into infrared and ultraviolet light spectrums to be able to see a UFO hiding in plain sight. And she said, funny that you say that, because I just bought an infrared camera and I got this picture. She took this picture and sent it to me. And this red orb, where that red orb was just stationary for 8 hours in the sky, maybe a half a mile or more from my house, just stuck in the sky, did not move. So it wasn't a meteor. It wasn't a satellite. It wasn't a star, wasn't a planet, wasn't anything that you can prove by our modern day science. Now the red orb that I saw stayed stationary, but the one that she got the photo of, it followed her for about 20 minutes in the Boston area when she went to go take her daughter from a music recital back to their home in Boston. And so the whole infrared ultraviolet light, and I can traverse my body, mind, spirit to look into these spectrums and see aircraft that use these light spectrums as a cloaking device. And I've been able to do this for a couple years, and it doesn't always work as well as I want to. Sometimes it works really well. But this is one where we actually got some kind of video of it. Now here's another sighting from my backyard. If you look at the top left photo, you just see a point of light. But if you see just to the right of it, there's another little point of light next to it. Can't exactly identify what it is, but now I can see that there's something about it. It seems like it's moving, and then it will move, and then it'll move back into place. It'll move, then it'll move back into place. How does it do that? Well, then it's not a plane. Planes don't fly backwards. So then if you go to the bottom left photo, you see it again. Doesn't really look like it's moved too much, although it did. And then in the third frame in the upper right, you see it's more like a dash across the photo. All of a sudden it just went, it must have taken off, I don't know, thousands of miles an hour, and then it just stopped. And then if you look at the photo in the bottom right, you see pretty much the same thing going back to the original photo in its original orientation. So that was something that I captured on photo, and usually I can't capture it. I try. Usually I don't capture anything, but that time I did, which was really, really cool. Now these resemble eyes. These things will just materialize on the walls and ceiling of my house. And we on Aquarian Radio had a really great guest who was also at Contact in the Desert, and I hope that Janet was able to meet him. His name was Brad Olson. He was a great interview, incredibly intelligent. But one thing he said is that ET is always here, and that there's some evolved, highly evolved extraterrestrial being or beings that are always watching us. So I'm walking through my house. I'd never seen this before. The left photo, I took a picture of it. You can see the corner of the lamp. And then the next one, I got more of a close-up. So if you look at it, the photo on the right, they kind of resemble eyes. To me, they're eyes. And almost like there's a little bit of white inside of each one. I interpret that as the pupils. But that was not there one day. Boom, all of a sudden it's there. There was something to it. And that's my obvious interpretation, is that they're always watching. Now this is right above my bed. The upper left photo, I used a fan blade just to give you some perspective as to where it is in my room. So imagine I lay down in my bed every night. I look up, I see my ceiling fan, and then I see these two eyes. They're always looking at me. And if you look at the frame on the right, it kind of looks like gray alien eyes. And there's no other places in my home like this, but right over my bed. Gee, imagine that. I have this thing I do with pendulums where I can have two different pendulums at the same time. They're both different lengths. One has a different weight than the other one. And I can make them spin at different velocities where it's pretty obvious that I'm not spinning them myself. It is actually telekinesis. And I demonstrate this in a video on YouTube. If you care to go look at it, you can see it on my website, johnpolkmedia.com, or you can go to YouTube and look up pendulum fire magic. Pendulum fire magic. All right. So once again, Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien. My publicist editor, Karen Christine Patrick, who spoke before me, she edited the book for me, did my websites, did my PowerPoint, and the book is available at johnpolkmedia.com and alienoraclescrolls.com. All right, so let's move on to the blue beings, visitation at the UFO conference. An introduction. So as the opening speaker at Experiencers Speak 4, August 28th and 29th of 2015, I conducted a seance designed to summon loving and benevolent angels and extraterrestrials. It worked. 5 appeared at the conference, and there were over 20 witnesses. So in my estimation, this is a historical event because of all the witnesses involved. Now, I know that they were sent by the Anunnaki. The reason, there's a bunch of reasons, but one reason is that one approached me and said to me, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki. And this sent me into what I call the alien anesthesia trance, where I lost time, I lost memory of what was going on. I remember most of the encounter, but right when I was going to take a picture of them, that's when this individual went up to me. He looked pretty much just like Jason Martell, who's on Ancient Aliens pretty much all the time. Curiously, he looked almost just like him, except he had these huge black eyes. I know he sent me into some kind of trance. Now, Don, their apparent leader, let's call him Don. He said, call him Don because we wouldn't be able to pronounce his real name. A lot of ascended extraterrestrials, which I know he was, they don't even have names. They are read, their identity is read by their vibration and frequency signature that they emit. These beings are so evolved that they don't even need a name. They are identified by their vibration and frequency. But anyway, Don, their apparent leader, he approached me first out of 150 people in this room, and he spoke with me more than any of the other witnesses by far. Therefore, I know I was chosen by Don, but not just Don, whoever his superiors were who sent him on this mission. They chose me and others, but mostly me, for this encounter. Now, this was a deliberate attempt at soft disclosure because of how overt in nature this visitation was. I mean, there were over 20 witnesses. Now, Don wanted to be seen, and he wanted to be heard, and he wanted to speak with other witnesses and myself. Why? Because he knew we would talk about it. Don knew I would spend the rest of my life talking about this encounter on shows, on this particular production, on YouTube. I'm going to talk about it until I die because it is that important. And also that I would write a book about it. Here's an actual quote from Don. I am a shifter and I am a healer from the Pleiades. Now, the UFO conference itself, Experiencers Speak For UFO conference in Portland, Maine, August 28th and 29th of last year, is unique in itself because most of the attendees, I'd say 80 to 90+% of them, are experiencers. So they're contactees, they're abductees, they're UFO witnesses, and they comprise most of the audience and the speakers. And we had an incredible lineup of speakers. There was Travis Walton, our keynote speaker, Grant Cameron, who was my actual favorite speaker out of everybody, Stanton Friedman, one of the most intelligent people you'll ever listen to in your life, Kathy Martin, who's related to Betty and Barney Hill, interestingly enough, Denise Stoner, hypnotic regression therapist, who lives in my hometown of Orlando, Florida, and myself were few of many of the speakers. And once again, Audrey Starborn Hewins and her family sponsored this annual event. Now, Audrey asked me to be the opening speaker because she knew I would take a spiritual approach to my presentation. And I did. That's why I did the guided meditation. Now, I decided to use the collective energies of all the experiencers and myself to perform a seance designed to summon angels and extraterrestrials. And this is something I can actually teach. I'm going to come up with an audiobook and just do it. Do this whole seance, and I'm going to give it away for free. Working on that. So I asked Enoch, Gabriel, Raphael, and Michael, all archangels or archaliens, to join us, since they are all part of the archalien Anunnaki pantheon. Now, here's a quote from Audrey Starborn Hewins. I pulled them into the light to better see their money because they came in late and just wanted to see Travis's presentation. And then I realized that 3 of them had blue skin. Now, this is a very brief portrayal of the guided meditation. It takes a lot longer. There's a lot more to it, but here's the basic constructs of it. So everybody hold hands. Breathe in God. Exhale lower energies. Breathe in God. Exhale lower energies. You go into a breathing regimen, which takes some time to explain. Then see God's light pass down from above. Enter through your crown chakra. Feel the light travel down through your chakras, all the way down to your feet, and back up again, creating a circle of God's light around you. Now, picture the God light surrounding all of us for protection as we invite loving, benevolent angels and extraterrestrials to join us in our congregation. Now, there are ETs in the room with us right now. We just can't see them because they're vibrating at a higher frequency. I can see them, and I can show you how. Now, focus on raising your vibration to a higher frequency so you can see into these other dimensional realms. Remember your breathing. So once again, that's just a brief part of the seance that I do. So I spoke on August 28th. Nothing happened on August 28th. On August 29th, which was a full moon, ironically, the conference is almost over. Travis, the keynote speaker, is soon to talk. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, nothing happened. If nothing happened, then I stuck my neck out there, and at least I had the guts to do so. And hopefully nobody calls me out on it. But anyway, but lo and behold, right as the whole Travis Walton DVD called Travis was going to be played, that's why we dimmed the lights, and his question and answer following it, right before any of that started, just in the nick of time, 5 beings show up at the door, 3 with blue skin. And there was a female involved, which I never saw, but a number of witnesses saw her. I was not meant to see her for whatever reason, but I did see the other four. They come up to me, and it's kind of strange. They have the money kind of like this in their hands. Instead of, you would hold your money tight in your hand, they kind of had it fanned out like a deck of cards, and came right up to me, of all people, out of all these people, 150 people, asked me, "Are you the one that we pay to see Travis?" And I'm like, no, no. So I find Audrey's twin sister, Debbie, who in turn locates Audrey. And then Audrey takes their money, and then they go and approach Travis. So then Don tells Travis that they came to see him. And Travis asks how they're enjoying the conference. And Don responds by saying, "Well, we just arrived." Then the ETs sit down for Travis's presentation and his DVD. After it's over, Don and the others walk up to me, about 150 people. They walk up to me, and Don tells me, this is very curious also. Don tells me his son was drugged by his stepfather, but he's now in his custody. And Don asks me about my book, and then I start trying to sell it to him. And we had a fairly lengthy conversation before a crowd gathered around us. And one of the key witnesses, and we've had him on Aquarian Radio talking about this, his name is R. Keith Andrews. He was voted the #1 psychic in Canada, I don't know, a number of years ago. Full-on experiencer. Met him a couple years ago at Experiencer Speak 3, and then he was at Experiencer Speak 4. But anyway, Keith Andrews and his wife, they come up, they see these blue beings talking with me and all these other people. They come up, and Keith just comes right up to him and says, "Hey, your skin is blue." And Don responds by saying that he's a shifter and a healer from the Pleiades. Now imagine how that's received by all of us. We were all completely floored. Now, here's some quotes that I wanted to offer. A quote from me. So Don tells me that his son was being drugged by his stepfather, and the son he was talking about, there was 4 males and the 1 female. 2 of the males had blue skin. The female had blue skin. But the one that looked like Jason Martell was the one that he was referring to. So I said, after he said that my son was being drugged by a stepfather, I said, "I'm glad that your son is with you now, and so that you can nurture him back to health." And then Audrey Hewins, referring to the money, talking to Don, said, "If you give me 4 of these, we'll call it even." And the funny thing is that after the fact, Audrey told me that they didn't have enough cash, and they didn't even understand the concept of paper currency. And the reason that they didn't, I would have to assume, is that when your currency is consciousness, that you don't understand what primitive paper money is like we use. Keith Andrews offered a quote. He told Don, he said, "I've seen a Martokian." So what's a Martokian? A Martokian is a Martian. According to Keith, I'd never heard this before, but according to Keith, we call Mars Mars, but the actual Martians that live there, and Martians do live there along with a bunch of other different beings as well, they call Mars Martok, thus a Martokian. And Keith's wife actually asked Don if she could get a hug, and lo and behold, Don hugged her. Was It's a total trip to see. A quote by Travis Walton: "How are you enjoying the conference so far?" And then other witnesses to this: Ron Sharfy, who we had on the show on Aquarian Radio; Debbie Hewins, which is Audrey's twin sister; Lynn Hartram, who works with Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free, who was sitting right next to me at the time, but she did leave before Don and the other beings came up and talked to me. Eric Mitchell is an experiencer like I am. He goes outside to have cigarettes because he doesn't like to smoke around his kids, and spaceships will show up, and then low-flying military aircraft will surround his house and stuff like that. And that same thing happens to me here in Orlando, Florida. But actually, Eric Mitchell and his son were apparent witnesses to this. Now, here's an interesting side story: is that I ran into Audrey Hewins' mom at a MUFON meeting here in Orlando, Florida on February 27th of this year. And we started talking to each other about the blue beings. And she said, "Did you hear about the encounter with his son?" I'm like, "No, I'd love to hear about it." She said that the blue beings approached him when he was in the pool and said, hey, you need to get out of the pool because your dad is about to speak. And so he gets out of the pool, and then they're gone. But he remembered them coming up to him and telling him to get out of the pool. I'm thinking that if they didn't come up to him and tell him to get out of the pool, then he would not have seen his father speak, or would have been late for his presentation. And ironically, his son sat next to me during his father's presentation, which was really brilliant. Lee Hazel is an IT guy from the UK, and a young lady named Rachel. I have not been able to get her last name. Keith Andrews claims that there are over 20 witnesses. I've heard others claim that there's over 20 witnesses, but I've had difficulty getting these individuals to share the entire list with me, although I do have my own working list myself. Let me go in to explain each of the visitors. So Don, he's almost exactly my height and my weight, curiously enough. He looked to be about 65 years old. He wore white sneakers, blue jeans, a nondescript flannel shirt, a hat like a ball cap, but more like a fishing hat that was beige in color, and prescription glasses. His hat he pulled curiously low over his face and eyes. He had very, very blue skin. Even his fingernails were grayish blue. And then after Travis's DVD and question and answer session, Don and the other ETs walked up to me. Out of everybody in there, they had walked up to Travis earlier. They had talked to Audrey. They had talked to Audrey's sister. But then they walk up to me after everything is done and start talking to me. So why would they come up to me? I know why. But they stayed next to me the entire time until they exited the room. Now, I spoke with Don, their leader, first, and I spoke with him most out of all of the witnesses involved. And I think about this every day. I try and remember every single word that we shared. And Don hypnotized me. I know he did the second that I walked in the room. And right before Keith said, "Your skin is blue," it soaked in heavily that as we made direct eye contact, I thought to myself, this being is blue. Oh my God, he's got blue skin. And then, so why did it take me almost 10 minutes to realize that Don and two other ones had blue skin? Well, it was the alien anesthesia. I talked to him for a while before I realized that his skin was blue, because he didn't want me to immediately notice it, because I would have probably messed up the whole situation. I probably would have taken out my phone, tried to take a bunch of pictures, and they would have left the room. And that's why they did what they did to me, by putting me under what I call alien anesthesia. Now let's call the one that looks like Jason Martell Kid. He was 6'1". He was wearing a hoodie, shorts, and sneakers. He looked to be about 18 years old. He had dark brown to black hair, a mild olive complexion, so he didn't have blue skin, but he had black eyes. I mean, huge black eyes, void of any color. No whites in his eyes, just two big black empty spheres in his eye orbits. And once again, Jason Martell, an accomplished ancient alien astronaut theorist, and Kid bared a striking resemblance. Now, as we were watching Travis Walton's new DVD entitled Travis, Kid stood up and walked around one of the 8-seater tables and then went back to sit down. He probably repeated this behavior 7 times. It was very strange, about 7-minute increments, and he did it about 7 times. Very strange. I couldn't help but notice this, but I didn't notice he had black eyes at this point. So after a crowd gathered around us, Kid walked over until he was directly in front of me. So he was pulling my attention from Don and everybody else talking to Don. And then he's looking me right in my eyes. And that's when I finally saw that his eyes were big and they were black and very mysterious and very entrancing. And he goes, "The Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki," kind of, twitched his head every time he said it. And it was almost robotic in his delivery. It was almost like he had autism or something like that. So after that, a state of paralysis came over me. I was going to take pictures of the blue beings and then follow them outside of the room, just out of my curiosity, see if they got in a station wagon or a spaceship, or just to see where they would go. And then I froze and I lost time. Now, once again, Ron Sharfy, one of the witnesses who we had on Aquarian Radio, he said to me, he said, kids saying, and quote Ron Sharfie now, kids saying the Anunnaki 3 times was a trigger mechanism to engage the alien anesthesia. And when he said that, that actually made so much sense. I've talked to other hypnotic regression therapists, who do it for a living, and they said that there are triggers that you can use to set off a hypnotic state. So I have to believe that that's definitely true. And then many witnesses saw the large blonde woman with blue skin and a Spanish accent, according to Audrey Hewins, who accompanied the 4 males. Let's refer to her as Jane. So, according to Audrey, she appeared to be their leader. But this is funny. I listened to Audrey on a different radio show, and she said after the blue beings left her and went and sat down, she forgot what she was doing. Audrey has been on TV numerous times as an experiencer on Destination America and other TV stations. Her whole life is about extraterrestrials and being an experiencer. Why would she not follow up after the conference and go see and talk to them again? Why would she not? Well, it goes back to what she said. After she got their money, she went and sat down and forgot about them. How do you forget about them? All right. So I never saw this woman. However, I do believe she was present. Some of the witnesses saw her, some did not. Curious why that would happen. Now, Audrey mentioned to Don about the blonde woman for whatever reason, and Don, he reacted as if he didn't understand what the word blonde meant, which is curious in itself. Now, something else I need to mention is that somebody that I know has asked Travis Walton about the blue beings, and he doesn't want to talk about it. And I do understand why. He doesn't want to be pulled back into the spotlight and get run through the press again. He just doesn't want to deal with it. That's my own educated guess as to why he doesn't want to touch this. But Audrey told me that that he told her about his interaction with the ETs. I'm going on record as saying that, as that was on Jimmy Church's show Fade to Black, which she and I did on January 27th of this past year. Okay, so there was another one which I haven't even mentioned yet, but Mark, the Martokian, like I said earlier, we refer to Mars as Mars, but actual Martians refer to Mars as Martok. Now, he was different than the rest, that's for sure. He was maybe 5 foot tall at the most, 130 pounds. He had a bald white head, pale white skin, tight-fitting sunglasses, and a Fu Manchu beard that extended 4 to 5 inches straight down from the bottom of his chin. He had no other facial hair. He was wearing a sleeveless white t-shirt, blue jeans, and moccasins. Resembling a biker in appearance, Mark did not speak, but stayed close to Don and myself, as they all did. They all stayed right next to me the whole time. I was able to reach out and touch Don and shake his hand a number of times. Totally trippy. Now, Karen Christine Patrick, I'm telling her this story, and she says, the short, bald guy is probably a Martian. So that's why we got it, just stuck. When she said he was probably a Martian, I just allowed that to stick. So Mark the Martokian. Now, the second blue male, he wasn't really a big player in this whole thing, although he did have the blue skin. So he was tall and thin with blonde hair. Appeared to be in his mid-30s. He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. He too had blue skin, but he was not as dark blue as Don. Don was more like a Mediterranean blue, and the second blue being was slightly lighter in coloring. Now, Dawn, the blonde woman, and he were 3 of the 5 who actually had blue skin. Now, standing next to Dawn the whole time, this individual, the other second male blue being, he didn't say anything until only right before they were about to leave the room. So Don was getting all loose and getting comfortable and fielding questions. And, Keith Andrews' wife hugged him, and, people were shaking his hand. And then, so then this other blue being, he finally said in Don's ear, probably 3 times, "We have to go." And this I actually heard because he's only a few feet away from me. "We have to go. We have to go. We have to go." And then they all promptly left the conference room, and not one of us followed them to see where they were going. None of us. Curious, since Don just said that he was a shifter and a healer from the Pleiades. I don't know how any of us didn't occur to us to follow them outside to see if they hopped in a spaceship or something. And then Keith Andrews, one of the key witnesses, right as they left the room, the doors closed, and he said, "We just saw Pleiadians." And we all had to agree, and we all just sat around and talked about it for perhaps a couple hours. And then alien anesthesia is, I really need to mention this. I coined the term alien anesthesia in my first book, Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. Now, alien anesthesia, I can best define as an effect that advanced extraterrestrials can administer to more primitive beings, i.e., we humans, to paralyze them and to make them experience missing time and missing memory episodes. So, of over the 20 witnesses, many of us experienced lost time and memory loss during the visitation. Most specifically, myself, Audrey Hewins, Ron Sharfy. We all talked about it amongst ourselves days after the fact. And then a number of us attempted to take pictures of the blue beings and were frozen in our tracks and completely forgot to do so. Now, I was going to take a picture of all four of them because at this point, the female was nowhere to be seen. And once again, I never saw her, but a number of other people did. And then I was going to follow them out of the conference room and even into the parking lot to see if they would enter a spaceship or simply vanish. That's once again when Kid approached me and started saying the Anunnaki as if he read my mind. And I know that he did because the timing, it was too exact. And the quote from Audrey Hewins regarding alien anesthesia: "You only remember what they want you to remember." And so Jimmy Church, he has perhaps the most famous podcast, internet radio show out there right now that deals with UFO and the paranormal. It's called Fade to Black. Jimmy Church had heard of this way before I ever knew I would be on the show. So Jimmy Church, he interviewed Audrey for about a half an hour, and then he interviewed me for almost 2.5 hours. 2 full hours we spoke about the blue beings. And Jimmy heard about this encounter sometime before the interview. Here's some actual quotes from Jimmy Church. Peter Robbins, who is a famous author, I believe he worked with Bud Hopkins back when Bud was still alive on a number of different projects. Great MC, brilliant author. He's a perfect person to be the MC for that whole conference. But Peter Robbins told me this originally. This is coming from Jimmy Church. You're right about the Jedi mind trick thing, and that's referring to the alien anesthesia. What a fascinating encounter all of you had. Another quote: "I wish I was there." Another quote: "Everybody that I know that was at that conference told me about this, and these are people that I know and trust." Another quote: "They wanted to be seen and noticed, and what could be more clear than that?" So that's Jimmy Church weighing in on that show. Those are actual quotes I took from the show off of YouTube. So we, the Anunnaki, we who serve on this panel today, many of us, if not all of us, carry at least some Anunnaki blood and or DNA. And that's why we're drawn to them and they are drawn to us. Once again, Enlil wishes to ascend, but he can't as long as we worship him as God. He has asked me to tell the world that Enlil, our biblical God, is an Anunnaki ET elder, not our God in the Bible. Higher gods rule the heavens, and the lesser gods rule the planets in the underworld. Enlil is a lesser god who rules earth through Judaism and Christianity, and he is ready to let us go through disclosure so that he can ascend to the realms of the heavenly gods. And I'm even receiving from Enlil that his false version of heaven and hell, he's ready to abandon and allow all those souls to go to the universal God consciousness, God light. If he does that, that is disclosure. Anunnaki hierarchy. Somebody sent the blue beings to me and everybody else that knows about them or was witness to them, so that I and we would proliferate the Anunnaki message. And something I mentioned earlier, Anunnaki colonized the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius, Cygnus, Mars, and many other regions of our galaxy, and pretty much many galaxies throughout. the universe, and the multiverse. So since Don said he's from the Pleiades, that four, he makes him at least part Anunnaki. And to close it out, a quote from Enlil of the Anunnaki: "It's time for full disclosure." So, any questions, anybody?
Hi, John. Let's see if there's anything in the chat, in the Q&A. 6 questions answered. Okay. All right. Nothing for you. So I just had a comment and feedback. And Sasha,
Sure.
do you have something to say?
I'm struck by how many people Yahweh murdered, and how he was down on women and things like that. And it doesn't very much seem beneficent to me.
Has he gone through a change of heart since he was doing the original evil actions?
And you know, I'm glad you brought that up. Karen and I talked about that. Is that if he does in fact leave this planet and become a higher god, if he leaves our planet in a shambles, then it's going to thwart his ascension process. So I believe that whether his intentions are true or not, that hopefully I'm right about this, that hopefully he will find a way for disclosure to come to we humans, and leave us in such a state where, like Karen was saying in the last presentation, where we are able to take care of ourselves, that we don't need them to take care of us anymore. So whether he does it with good intentions or selfish intentions, just based on the fact that he wants to ascend and become a higher god, hopefully he does it with the best intentions. We don't have to suffer through, you know, what exactly what you said, Dr. Lesson, you know, murdering people, the way he's treating women. Most religions look down and treat women poorly, and I don't like it. Religion divides us. Religion separates us. You know, if we can all come to terms with the fact that there is one universal God consciousness, there is monotheism. Okay, if we can all hold hands and realize that the most important race on this planet is the human race, and we're all a part of it, and we're all a part of this closure as well.